Well, we welcome Adam Smith from Sky Sports Boxing here this morning. Terribly sad news, but it has to be a celebration of his life and a celebration of all the great boxers, like we've seen David Haye there and Anthony Joshua, who were here because of Muhammad Ali, you'd have to say, and the fact that they weren't even born when he was boxing. That's how much of an impact he had.
That says it all, doesn't it? A particularly sad day, it really is, but a day that obviously we can reflect on the magnificence, the iconic figure that was Cassius Clay, and then obviously latterly Muhammad Ali. He was so much more than just boxing, but boxing was his love. Boxing was what he excelled at, winning the Olympic gold, you know, becoming world champion, you know, the fights with Sonny Liston when he came over here, obviously, and fought Henry Cooper. And then there's so many great moments, you know, the trilogy with Frazier, the Rumble in the Jungle, which was just against all the odds, the rope-a-dope, the way he overcame the huge, incredible George Foreman. And if you sort of look at what Foreman's been saying today, you know, part of his whole being has gone today because of his fondness for Ali. And I think everybody in the world's fondness for Muhammad Ali. You've seen those pictures with the Beatles. He spread so wide, you know, the wonderful interviews that Michael Parkinson did with him. You know, he touched so many people, not just in our boxing world, in our community, but throughout the world. And I think there'll be no other, possibly because of the political stance, the fact that he had that time out of the ring. He didn't go to Vietnam. You know, he was a huge figure for Black America. You know, now look at Barack Obama, look at, you know, what Floyd Mayweather and Sugar Ray Leonard and fighters like that are saying about Ali. He was just an incredible human being. And my colleague Glenn McCrory was saying earlier to me, you know, so humble. He was just humility as well. He was so good with people, not just about himself. He was, you know, phenomenal in the ring and wonderful. His wit, his poetry, his almost arrogance outside it was just hysterical at times and fun, and then he backed it up in the ring. But then he was so humble as well, and of course because of the devastating illness of Parkinson's that took his, you know, it's such a different route over the last few years. He became just a person that gave so much to the world, and I think he will be really, really sadly missed, but remembered in an incredible way. I don't think there'll ever be anyone like him again.
For those people who might be watching, who might not be so familiar with Ali and his life, can you try and put into context just how big a superstar of his time he was and what an icon he really was?
Or magnetism, really. I mean, I grew up in an era of Mike Tyson, and he was probably the most famous sportsman on the planet then. But before me, my dad tells me that, you know, he was just the biggest personality, the biggest figure. You know, Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, and as I said, because of his stance, because of his way that he didn't go to Vietnam as well. That took him to another level as well. But in the ring, he was just phenomenal. And, you know, he lost 5 times. You know, he wasn't invincible. And I think that was part of the brilliance of Ali, the way he came back, got up off the floor. He had a terrific chin. He was brilliantly quick. His speed, his shuffle, you know, that mirrored what he was saying outside of the ring. You know, I remember in fights, he'd take time, you know, in the corner, in the ring, to talk to the commentators, to talk to Howard Cosell, you know, in the middle, and almost commentate on what was happening in the ring. He was like no other, and his impact on the sport was phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure you'll talk to people like Prince Nassim Hamed later, who, you know, who just idolized Ali and tried to sort of reflect them. You had Chris Eubank on, you know, tried to bring that sort of drama into the sport, but there was no one like Ali. He was the first person to do it. He changed the world of boxing forever, and he transcended it as well. He was just an incredible human being for what he went through, for what he stood for, through all of this, not just in boxing terms, but in social terms. You know, he was iconic.
What do we do now to celebrate his legacy now that he has gone? How do we mark it?
Well, it's interesting that, you know, you just had Anthony Joshua and David Haye, and so many fighters. I had Anthony Crolla this morning, and so many world champions now who idolized Ali, who pictures are up on the wall, and they don't, you know, they weren't even around really when he was at his peak. You know, this is years later, so they remember the pictures that we're seeing now, the Frazier fights, the Foreman fights, you know, Ken Norton, that brilliant performance against Cleveland Williams. You know, there were so many great nights for Muhammad Ali, but he was so photographed. He was so beautiful, wasn't he? A handsome man, an absolute, you know, superstar at a time when, you know, rock and roll, the Beatles were happening, you know, music. There were so many other things, the changing time of the 60s and 70s, and I think that's why he had that impact like no other. And you've just got to listen to the likes of your Mayweathers and your Sugar Ray Leonards and your Anthony Joshuas, you know, who are all talking in such high esteem. You know, everybody's coming together about Muhammad Ali, and I think that the pictures that we all see, those wonderful shots in black and white and in colour, will be replayed and replayed and replayed, and the stories will go down through the generations, because he was the greatest sportsman in the 20th century and maybe the greatest human being.
Now, Adam, did you ever meet Ali?
I did.
And how was that?
I did, but it was late on. It was only a few years ago when he came over to London. He was very frail, but it was a big dinner. And, you know, just to be around him and the people that wanted to be around him. I remember the Klitschko's were there, and there were Formula One stars, and everybody just wanted to be as close as they could be to Muhammad Ali. He had that power, that aura, that you just wanted to be near the man. And he was so humble, and he spent so much of his life later on helping others and giving back, you know, to a sport that had given so much to him and made him such a household name. He spent so much time giving back, and I think that's why he will be forever loved, forever remembered, and never, ever, ever will there be anyone like him. And I really think that that is the truth.